So, you are interested in astrophotography, but do you also speak the secret language that we use in this hobby? I've researched this vocabulary of abbreviations for over a month and made a list and checked it twice. In this video, you'll learn about 100 astrophotography abbreviations and their meaning, but hopefully it will also allow you to better explain to peers what you are actually meaning when you write things like, "Oh my MG, my PhD RMS is much better after installing the EAF, and my OAG, but WTF, what happened after the AMF?" I am Martin Schoenmaker and I call myself Koplamp on this channel. If you are new on this channel, welcome, and if you are a regular visitor, thanks for your support. The list of 100 abbreviations will be featured alphabetically, so if you are eager to learn what the abbreviation ZWO actually means, you'll have to stick around till the end. In order to prevent this video from becoming an incoherent mess, I divided the list into 5 categories. Those are camera, computer, mount, telescope, and, well, let's call it other. See the YouTube video chapters feature if you want to jump to a specific category. Oh, and I will also highlight videos in the there top right when I have one that features the subject of the mentioned abbreviation. And I'll try to remember to add those to this video in the future too when I add more videos to my channel. Okay, enough of this. Let's get cracking. Time for the first category. Camera. APS-C stands for Advanced Photo System Type C. Of the many types of the sensor sizes that exist for cameras, APS-C is generally used in the more affordable cameras. Talking about sensors, a CCD is an integrated circuit of capacitors that have the property of converting electromagnetic radiation into an electrical charge, a charged coupled device. CCDs are generally more expensive to produce than the next item on our list, which is CMOS. That stands for Complementary Metal Oxide Semiconductor, also a sensor. More noisy than the CCD, but advancements in the technology have brought them almost on par to CCDs at lower cost. A DSLR is a digital single lens reflex camera. A mirror makes viewing your framing through an optical viewfinder possible, but just before you take the image, the mirror is moved out of the way so light can hit the sensor. F-stop is a term that is also known as f-number or f-ratio. It is just that, a ratio between the focal length and the aperture of your optics. The lower the number, the more light will reach the sensor. Optics with a small f-stop are known as fast, as it takes less time to get enough photons on the sensor. FOV is the field of view, basically determining how much of the night sky will end up on your photo. A landscape image requires a big field of view, whereas a tiny planet would need a very small field of view. IR is the abbreviation for infrared, meaning lower than red. It refers to the part of the light spectrum outside the red visible part of the spectrum. The longer wavelength makes it ideal to show objects that hide behind dust. Infrared is also the spectrum visualized with thermal cameras. IS stands for image stabilization. Some lenses and cameras have this option. For astrophotography, this needs to be turned off. Getting sharp stars in your image is the job of your mount and its tracking accuracy. LRGB is a bunch of letters referring to filters. L is luminance and RGB stands for red, green and blue. MF is another camera setting, but this time it is your friend. Manual focus. It will allow you to get the best focus, as generally autofocus is designed for daytime use. Mono is short for monochromatic. Typically a sensor is only sensitive for light, regardless of its color. Photos taken with an unfiltered sensor will be monochrome, black and white. Using LRGB filters will get you the color back. NB stands for narrow band, a very specific type of filters that only pass a tiny bandwidth of light onto the sensor. It allows for highlighting specific types of light found in nebulae. ND is also a filter. A neutral density filter can be used to bring down light intensities, but in astrophotography you'll probably only have use for these in very specific nightscapes. OSC is in theory a mono camera with a specific filter array called a Bayer matrix in front of the sensor, and that way the camera turns into a one-shot color camera. QE is the quantum efficiency, basically the ratio of photons that actually succeed in getting registered by the sensor. You'll see this mentioned on websites selling astrophotography cameras. SHO is a set of narrowband filter types. Combining sulfur, hydrogen and oxygen light into an RGB image creates a combination known as the Hubble palette. It provides a good visual contrast between the three types of light predominant in many nebulae. SNR is the signal to noise ratio. Every image contains noise. Pixels on the sensor register a false signal, and the true signal due to photons is what you need. And the signal to noise ratio determines how much true signal you have compared to the noise. UHC filters provide ultra high contrast. Designed to block certain wavelengths, they create a punchier image. It can be useful to make certain objects stand out from the background better. UV is a wavelength of light in the opposite end of the spectrum as IR. You usually find filters that block both UV and IR, and this generally prevents stars from getting bloated in your image, as those wavelengths have different focus points from the visible light. WB is our last abbreviation in this category. White balance is a setting in your camera which balances the way the color data is stored in the resulting file. Generally, you will want to shoot in a RAW format, which in most cases removes the need for white balance at the time of shooting. Computer-based acronyms and abbreviations are next, and let's start with a famous website. APOD is a website that showcases an astronomical picture every day since June 16, 1995. And being featured as an amateur astrophotographer on the Astronomy Picture of the Day website is considered by some as the Oscars of astronomy. APP is a commercial program which is made for stacking astrophotography images. Made by fellow Dutchman Mabula Haverkamp, this is a very popular program in the astrophotography community, even though free alternatives exist. APT is the astrophotography tool, a very popular program that runs on Windows, which is able to control your camera and many accessories throughout an image run. AS3 is AutoStackit 3. Emiel Kraaikamp is another Dutch software developer who wrote this free stacking program which specializes in planetary processing. And just recently a version 4 went in public beta. ASCOM is an acronym you can read in relation to many cases where computers are used with astrophotography gear. The Astronomy Common Object Model enables computers to more easily talk to your gear. BlurX is short for Blur Exterminator. It basically does deconvolution operations on your images which try to mathematically reduce the blur which occurs due to our atmosphere. DSS is the freeware stacking program which probably everybody in astrophotography has heard of. It stands for Deep Sky Stacker and it only runs on Windows. EAA stands for Electronically Assisted Astronomy, which is the use of a camera instead of an eyepiece to capture and immediately view the images. Live stacking can be used to make nebulosity stand out better. FITS is the file format which is the standard in astrophotography. The flexible image transport system contains metadata which allows software to read information such as the telescope mount orientation, filter usage and much more. FWHM is a concept which in the field of astrophotography can be used to quantify the quality of your stars in your image. The full width at half maximum is smallest for images which have the best focus. HDR is a processing technique which creates images of a high dynamic range, specifically useful for images of objects which have both very bright and very dim regions. HLVG is a free plugin for Photoshop which allows for an easy way of reducing the green cast in images, which is apparent due to the way color sensors are working. Jokingly called Hasta la Vista Green is one of the many ways to get to this result. Indie is another intermediary layer to act as a bridge between astronomical software and hardware. It stands for Instrument Neutral Distributed Interface. Nina is open source software that provides a full-fledged control platform of everything in your astrophotography. The nighttime imaging and astronomy platform runs on Windows. PhD2 is the open source program that allows for guiding the mount. It stands for Push Here Dummy and it runs both on Windows and macOS. PI is the astrophotography processing program of choice for many. PixInsight is far from free but extremely powerful. PIP stands for Planetary Imaging Preprocessor and it is exactly that. Among many other features, it can help crop around a planet so that subsequent software only has to spend time on processing actual data instead of the blackness around the planet. SGP is another software suite to control your astrophotography equipment. Sequence Generator Pro is paid software that runs on Windows. Cyril started as a Linux version of Iris. Its name is IRIS, reversed with an L added behind it. It is open source, free software for processing astrophotography for all major operating systems. The active developers add functionality all the time, which normally only reside in the far more expensive PixInsight. XISF is a file format written by PixInsight. The extensible image serialization format can be read by other software such as Cyril, but my personal advice is to use FITS instead when wanting to share files amongst astrophotographers. Mounts are the next category, which start with two very short notations. The night sky is divided into degrees, and those are divided in 60 arc minutes, marked with the apostrophe. And the arc minutes are divided again in 60 arc seconds, with the quotation mark. And both these notations are used in several ways in regard to mounts. Mounts come in two main orientations. The first on this list is the simplest way for moving a telescope, which is Alt-Az. This is short for altitude and azimuth. Simply said, up and down and left and right. The AM5 is a very popular harmonic mount by ZWO. And this brand has many products on the market with another abbreviation, ASI. And the AM5 is the ASI Mount 5. There is also a smaller version called the AM3. AMF is referring to the automatic meridian flip. Many mounts will have to perform a flip when the telescope reaches the meridian in the sky. CEM is a type of mount that was first popularized by Ioptron. The center-balanced equatorial mounts have a few benefits that enable them to carry relatively heavy loads. CW stands for counterweight. The motors in a mount only have so much torque, and by balancing the telescope with counterweights you can improve the accuracy of the mount. Dec is the declination. Equatorial mounts have a declination and a right ascension axis. The declination axis points at a right angle to the axis which points to the celestial pole. The more expensive mounts often have the letters EC in their name, and it means the mounts are equipped with encoders. An encoder allows the mount to know its exact orientation even after power loss. Another two-letter abbreviation you'll see in mount names is EQ, which stands for equatorial. The two axes are now not simply moving up and down as in the old S mounts, but they move in declination and right ascension. And this marks the halfway point in the video, which requires me to refer to a YouTube abbreviation called CTA. That's call to action. It is referring to that like button down there that you can just simply press, and then it will help me out, and it will also share this nice video, I hope, to many more people. So let's continue. GEM mounts are the first to apply the equatorial setup. First applied by Joseph von Fraunhofer in 1824, the German equatorial mounts quickly became the standard mount throughout the world. Many manufacturers are now also building harmonic mounts. Ioptron calls these HAE mounts, the harmonic equatorial mount. On Ioptron mounts you'll find a HBX port. This is where you connect the hand box, also known as HC, hand control. PA is the polar alignment you need to perform on equatorial mounts. The right ascension axis needs to be pointing exactly at the celestial pole, such that the mount only needs to move on that axis to compensate for the rotation of the Earth. PE is periodic error. Due to the way cogwheels and worm wheels are interacting with each other, inaccuracies in these wheels will reoccur on every rotation, causing a periodically returning inaccuracy. PEC is periodic error correction. The mount can be trained to learn its periodic error so it can counteract the error. The right ascension axis is usually referred to as RA. It is the axis that needs to be pointed to the celestial pole, and together with the DEC axis they make up the two movement axes of the equatorial mount. RMS is an abbreviation you'll hear mentioned when referring to mount performance when guiding. The root mean square is a statistical term that allows for calculating the average displacements needed for correcting the guiding of the mount. And the last abbreviation in this category is ST4, which is an outdated way to make the mount receive guide pulses. It stands for Star Tracker version 4. Nowadays you'll better leave that port unused, as guiding over the USB connection is much more convenient. And you can ask Dylan O'Donnell what to do with your ST4 cables. So we've worked our way through 60 abbreviations now, covering cameras, computers and mounts. Next up are telescopes and accessories on the telescope side. First up is ACF, which you'll find on certain MEAT telescopes. Advanced coma-free telescopes have a flat image, just like the Edge HD from Celestron, for instance. ADC is an atmospheric dispersion corrector, which planetary imagers use to minimize the effects of our atmosphere dispersing the light coming in. This is achieved by rotating two prisms such that the incoming light produces the best possible resolution and clarity. Refracting telescopes come in two major optical qualities. The APO abbreviation is for the apochromatic telescopes, which have extra lens elements which correct for chromatic aberration, also known as color fringing. Some people make their own telescopes from the ground up, and this subgenre of the hobby is known as ATM, amateur telescope making. C8 is one of the most popular sizes in a range of Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes from Celestron. The 8 stands for 8-inch, the aperture of the telescope. CDK telescopes are corrected Dal-Kirkham telescopes. They are manufactured by Planewave, And simply put, this is one of the many types of Cassegrain telescopes that have corrective elements to create a flat field without coma. DOB is a term you will probably hear answered when asking what kind of telescope you should buy first. DOBs are the simplest to manually aim and are relatively affordable up to big apertures. First built by John Lowry Dobson, this type took on his name. The EAF is an accessory by ZWO that allows for electronic automatic focusing. There are many manufacturers, but the EAF is one I use on both my rigs. ED is a type of glass you will see used on certain telescopes or eyepieces. Extra low dispersion means it has less quality reducing effects than other types of glass. The EFW is another accessory by ZWO which helps with automation. This is the electronic filter wheel and it allows the telescope to automatically switch filters. EHD refers to the Edge HD, which stands for High Definition, a telescope built by Celestron. Just like the ACF telescopes by Meade, it is a Cassegrain type telescope that has a corrective lens in the baffle tube which flattens the field of view. FL is how many people refer to the focal length of an optical system. Simply put, the longer the focal length, the higher the magnification you'll achieve. Maksutov telescopes are a specific optical design which are known to have outstanding performance as planetary telescopes. The abbreviation Mach is therefore often found in the footers of images of planets and the moon. Another telescope type is referred to as Newt. That is the Newton telescope, and it's named after Sir Isaac Newton, who invented the reflecting telescope with an eyepiece port at the side of the tube. The OAG is an accessory that will be advised to many people using long focal length telescopes. The off-axis guider will allow a guide camera to see light from the same light path as the main camera by stealing a bit of it away using a prism. OTA is the optical tube assembly. A bit of a weird name because not all telescopes are tube shaped, but still it is the most common abbreviation used to refer to the telescope itself. RASA is yet another telescope type. The Rowe Ackerman Smith astrograph is specifically built for astrophotography and has the camera at the front of the telescope. Richie Chrétien is the true meaning of the letters RC, although many people might think it means rough collimation. Another telescope type. The RDF is an alternative to the finder scope. A red dot finder projects a laser dot on a glass plate through which you see the starry night. Finally, we end the telescope category with the Smith Cassegrain telescope, abbreviated as SCT. Many of the mentioned telescope types were SCT variants. The last 20 abbreviations will be in the Other category, and we'll start with an abbreviation used a lot by ZWO. And in my research I couldn't get to a conclusive answer on what ASI actually means, but the best I could find was astronomy imaging. I guess AI was already taken. CN is an abbreviation you'll come across online. CN refers to the forum named Cloudy Nights, a nice play on the atmospheric effects we have to contend with in our wonderful hobby. DSOs are the deep sky objects we all love to image. FLO, FLO, stands for First Light Optics, a shop based in the UK that teases their customers with stickers warning about clouds and snow when opening the package. The GRS is out of this world, literally. It's the abbreviation used for the Great Red Spot, a huge storm on Jupiter which has been witnessed through telescopes for hundreds of years already. An out of this world telescope is the HST, the Hubble Space Telescope, which is in orbit around Earth since 1990. And if shooting astrophotography, you can manage to shoot a fairly recent discovered nebulosity. Lit by the combined light of our own galaxy, the IFN is the so-called Integrated Flux Nebula. The ISS is the International Space Station. The first section is in orbit since November 20th, 1998, and since November 2nd, 2000, it has been continuously occupied. JWST is the James Webb Space Telescope. Launched in 2021, it is the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, but actually it is complementing it as its detectors work in a very different bandwidth of light. One of the more difficult types of DSOs to shoot in astrophotography are catalogued with the letters LDN, Lens Catalogue of Dark Nebulas. The most famous catalogue of DSOs, however, only uses one letter, M for Messier. He wanted to discover comets, but instead found lots of stationary fuzzy patches between the stars. And his list of annoying non-comets is now a treasure trove for astrophotographers. Messier skipped over a lot of fuzzy patches though, and one of the more complete catalogues is the New General Catalogue, which lists all objects with the abbreviation NGC. When the sun sits at a specific angle below the horizon and atmospheric conditions are just right, you can spot seemingly glowing clouds on the horizon caused by meteor dust floating high up in the atmosphere. NLCs are noctilucent clouds. QHY is a popular camera brand, but what does it stand for? Well, it's simply short for the name of the founder of QHY CCD, Dr. Kui Hong-yun, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Another camera brand goes by the letters QSI, and this time it's not a person but Quantum Scientific Imaging. The next abbreviation on our list is SBIG. This too is a camera brand, and based in the US, this is the Santa Barbara Imaging Group. Many people mention a SQM value when posting results online. Measured by a sky quality meter, it indicates the brightness of the night sky in magnitudes per square arcsecond. TS, a European telescope shop. Telescope Service, as they are formally known, is a pretty big player based out of Germany. WO scopes are built by William Optics, relatively affordable but very good in quality. The refractor you see used on my channel is the William Optics 81 GT, Gran Turismo. And finally, the abbreviation that was not that easy to find is that of ZWO. It simply means Zhenwang Optical Company. So now you can speak the secret language of astrophotography. Did I miss any? Let me know in the description below. And don't forget to use the call to action buttons, the CTAs that YouTube provides. And oh yeah, enjoy the two videos which are presented here and here. Bye bye.